going on to user questions. I'm sure this one is probably a question quite a few people know about, and they're asking, do you know of the misunderstanding between James Toney and Emanuel Steward?
I'll tell you a story. Has nothing to do related to James Toney or Bill Miller, but it has to do with Emanuel Steward. And then you can make your judgment. So in 1995 and in 1996, my brother fought in two different tournaments. All right, so he fought at the National PALs, the National Police Athletic League, and that was the first qualifying tournament to make it for the Olympic trials in 1996. So it was in 1995. I think it was like in November. It was in Dallas or something like that. There were so many people in his weight class that the tournament ended on Saturday. He had to fight on Sunday. So he had fought Saturday like at 6 or 8 o'clock. And he had to fight Sunday morning at like 9 o'clock in a gym somewhere. And they had to score the fight, whatever. So Emanuel Steward shows up to the fights on Saturday. And, my brother wasn't a big fan of Emanuel Steward. And now I know why. So he winds up, coming to the fight, and he's like, oh, it doesn't make a difference if Palac wins this tournament or if Palac wins the Olympic trials, because I know he's going to be, I'm going to turn him pro, this and that. And he was telling people this, whatever. And we know this because my brother heard it, my dad heard it, and people came up to them and told them this. So fast forward, Olympic trials come around, and, same conversation is had. Oh, it doesn't make a difference if he wins, he loses, whatever it is, he's going to be turning pro with me. I'll tell you, after my brother lost in Olympic trials, he says, I never, ever, ever want to speak or see Emanuel Steward ever again in my life. And we'll leave it at that.
Interesting. So we'll let the viewers make their own minds up then.
So, there's, and just like with anything, there's misunderstanding, there's bad blood, there are people that take credit for what somebody else did. And that's why I always say, like, there were other coaches at Kronk that did a lot. Like, I don't want to take anything away from Emanuel Steward. He did an amazing job. I don't want to say anything bad about anybody. But like I said, the credit that's due to like Floyd Logan is not, it's not talked about. Like that guy, like he was the guy that, like I said, was there grinding with kids, with adults every single day, dealing with bullshit. You know what I mean? In some instances, like he had people that would come in there and they'd walk into his locker room, his little office that I described, and, they'd take gloves, put it in their bag, and they'd walk out. And he'd be like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? And then they'd come back, and then they try to do it again. He's like, where the hell are my gloves that you took, So, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the bullshit that he had to deal with. Did Emanuel have to deal with other bullshit? Probably. But, guys like Floyd Logan, Walter Smith, Bill Miller, Sammy Poe, Luther Burgess, like those guys did a lot. You know what I mean? Bill Miller, fantastic coach, fantastic strategist. Like, the story is that originally there was a gym on the east side of Detroit. I believe it was somewhere on 7 Mile. That that's where a lot of fighters got their start at. In the early 70s, mid 70s, whatever. And then eventually they migrated to Kronk. And that's kind of like, I believe that's what happened with Tommy. And so Bill used to be at that gym, if I'm not mistaken. That's how, the story was told. And, Bill came over later in the years to Kronk. And then eventually, he was working with James Toney. Jackie Callan opened up a gym. It was called Galaxy Boxing. She had a couple fighters. He went with James Toney. They went to Galaxy Boxing. And it's all that, whatever. I mean, you should ask Lights Out if he'll have a conversation with you, man.
That would be an interesting one, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they have a lot to say because he's very vocal, really, isn't he, about the coaching.
Yeah.
And Bill Miller, how much. It may be James Toney, who I heard say. I'm not sure who it was, so I won't say for sure, maybe mistaken. But they mentioned that Emanuel Steward would come in for the last couple of weeks for fight preparation. Before that, most of the other guys, probably the guys you mentioned, they were doing the bulk of the work. But I suppose that is part of being a team. But just maybe they were the unsung heroes, unfortunately. Is that something that you would sort of agree with in your experiences?
I can't say that I've seen it first eye, but has it happened? What from people have said? You know?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing is like, you know, what other people don't understand is that there's Kronk, which Kronk is actually named after a guy that was a council member for Poland.
Yeah. Mm.
He originally came from Poland, whatever, and then they built a recreational center for him in like the 20s. When the boxing gym opened, I have no idea. I don't know if it was originally there or not. So what year that Emanuel, went to start working out at Kronk, I don't know if it was like 75, 76. I'm not 100% sure. But what I do know is that Sammy Poe, I believe Luther and Bill came from a different gym to Kronk. All right. And, it is what it is. Like,
Luther Burgess, I'm sure, came from Eddie Futch's coaching sort of line, didn't he? Which would have been the Brewsters, maybe, right?
Brewster.
Yeah, yeah.
Brewster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Luther Burgess came from Eddie Futch's sort of line, didn't he?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
So, and it's like, I remember, I've worked out in Brewster, whatever. I used to go down there and spar. They had a couple guys there. Actually, so Jonathan Banks, if you remember him, he's so Jonathan Banks originally got his start at Brewster. I remember I used to spar him down in Brewster, like never at Kronk, but at Brewster, like in the 90s. And I cannot remember the name of the guy that was there. That was the coach. I've drawn a blank. But that guy, he was a former heavyweight contender, trained under Eddie Futch, and there you go, man. It's like not much has changed with what makes a successful boxer. Not much has changed with styles of boxing. The only difference is that after, the curtain fell in 1989, you had more influence of Eastern European, fighting and styles that were exposed to, the United States in the professional ranks. That's basically the biggest change. I mean, if you think of almost anything that's strength and conditioning related, it all came from the Eastern Bloc. So, almost all the strength and conditioning stuff all has its roots in the Eastern Bloc, and that's attributed to a guy named Louis Simmons, who was the guy that started Westside back in like the 70s. He was the guy that helped, transcribe Russian training journals into what we use today.
Oh yeah, Louis Simmons. Yeah, I've heard of him because when I was doing the bodybuilding, the West Side Barbell. Yeah, that was very famous. Yeah, yeah.
And so if you look at everything that's from like this, because I remember we had like
that was the 90s as well, wasn't it? That was the 90s, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but he was more like he started like in the 70s. Nobody knew about him until like the 90s.
Yeah.
But that's the other thing is so much is still the same, but it's not the same.
Okay, so we've got a question here about the Kronk schedule. So, did the Kronk Gym, did they follow a specific schedule for class that day, or did guys come in, train on their own, and decide themselves what they're going to do for that day? And what do you think is best?
So that's how it was at Kronk. It depended, but like I said, it was structured in, the main professional fighters, they came in somewhere like 1:30, and they would stay there till maybe 3:30, 4, and then you would have another group of people that would come in, like myself and anybody that was school age. They would come in like at 3:30, 4 o'clock, and then we'd be out of there by 5:30, just at the same time as another group would come there at 5. But everybody overlaid, and sometimes there are sparring sessions. Oh man, nobody left. You know what I mean? So it depends on who was sparring too. So, it wasn't like a set schedule of these guys came in, they did this, they did this. A lot of people did what they wanted to do on their own.
Okay.
Some of them worked with whatever coach was there, and that's what it was. But it basically, the workouts outside of sparring revolved around, you came into the gym, you did some form of workout, you shadow boxed, you hit the bag, you might have did some pad work, you might have hit the bag again. If you didn't spar, then you didn't spar. You do some, ab work and stuff like that. You jump rope for 5-10 minutes, maybe a few rounds. And then you'd stretch out and you'd leave. You know what I mean? And now, we'll save the best for last, is what actually happened during sparring sessions. Because, that's like what Kronk is known for, is like the sparring sessions, because hardly any of them are recorded, and the ones that are recorded are, I don't know how people recorded them, because nobody really allowed anybody to record anything when we were there. So this is how it worked when it came to sparring. All right. It is 100% hardcore. Like, that's it. Like, you got into the ring and you had to prove yourself. Like, I remember when I started sparring, with some of the younger amateurs and stuff like that, like, I had to prove myself. You know what I mean? There was no like, oh, we take it easy or anything like that. No. It's like, bell goes off, we're swinging, we're trying to kill each other. You get what I mean? And that was like how it was. And then a lot of people, depending on the time schedule, say, for example, if there were pros that were sparring and somebody got hit, they got clipped or whatever, and they wobbled a little bit. There was a guy, his name was, we called him Bam, all right? And Bam would be like the instigator of, he would rile people up, and he'd be like, come on. And he would start screaming. And the one thing that he would be known for is he would like make this machine gun sound with his mouth. He'd be like, brrr, keep hitting, shoe shine, brrr, shoe shine, brrr. And like, imagine this guy's like screaming at the top of his lungs, and like he's antagonizing. So then the entire ring is surrounded by people in the gym. So they're standing on, the little raised platform, which was, I would say, probably like 8 inches. It was sitting off of a 2x8, and they're all standing there. And then you have the people that are jump roping, and everybody that's standing behind those people, and they're like, everybody's just watching the sparring session. And it would just be like, sometimes it'd be like an all-out war. And then you hear this guy, antagonizing. Oh, how are you going to let me hit you with that? Oh, keep your hands up, Oh, he's wobbling, he's going down. You know what I mean? Like, he was color commentary, and his name was Bam. And people that were there and have seen it know that that's what happened. And one of the things that I think I learned probably when I was maybe like 14 or 15, and, at that time, I think I was like 132, 139. Yeah, 132 or 139. I was like, man, I can't sit here and fight anymore. Like, I just don't want to fight. You know what I mean? And that's like, yeah, when I was like 13, 14, that's when like the Eastern style of boxing, the Eastern block style of boxing really started to like set in on me. I was like, well, I'm tall, I'm skinny, I have some power, but I'm not powerful enough like some of the younger kids, some of the older kids that I'm sparring with that are much more muscular than me and much more, stockier than me. So I'm like, shit, what I got to do? So, we started working on basically, hey, work on your strengths. And my dad said, listen, we can sit here and try and make you strong, but that's not going to work. We're going to work on your jab. We're going to work on you moving. And, the joke was, we're Polish. So we had a Polish and English way of describing punches, and like nobody knew what we were talking about. So my dad's famous saying would be like nawakoa, which means go around, nawakoa. So that's what you need to do. You're a tall fighter, you're fighting somebody, you can't go back, you got to go around. And so that was like burned into my head. So I'm hearing my dad screaming, nawakoa. And then I hear the guy, bam, screaming, brrr, brrr, you know what I mean? And you have other people be like, oh my God, look at that, whatever. And so, as time progressed, like, I'm like, man, it started like leveling out for me where I'm like, okay, I don't have the best sparring sessions. Like, I just don't, you know what I mean? I would have better fighting, better experience when I fought. And then it was probably around the age of maybe 17. Yeah, 17 when I sparred with a 178 pounder, and I was just 165. And mind you, he wasn't a great fighter, but he could hit. And I remember everybody was around the ring because we were just trading blows left and right. And all I remember is I cracked him once, and I know that he fell. And the next thing that I remember, I'm in the locker room opening up my locker. I don't remember anything. And people are like, man, I can't believe how long you guys sparred for. I'm like, what? Like, I just remember the first round. I don't remember anything after the first round. I had gotten clipped, a couple times, but we didn't stop the sparring session. I got dropped. I think I might have dropped him once, whatever. And that was like my first experience with getting like a concussion, because I don't remember anything. They're like, yeah, and then you took off your gloves, you went and jump roped. I'm like, I don't remember any of that. You know what I mean? And I'm in the locker room trying to open my locker, and I don't even remember opening my locker. I'm like, I forgot my combination, all this. They had to come and cut my lock off, whatever. Logan came and cut my lock off. I'm like, what just happened? You know what I mean? And it was like, after that moment, I was like, you know what? I need to really not get drawn into fighting. And that was like, I'm like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to look boring as shit, but I'm going to be as effective as I can. I'm going to stay on the outside. You want to crowd me? I'm going to go, like my dad said, nawakoa. You know what I mean? And that's when I started really working on like my check hook, where it's basically I lean back. It's like the Soviet hook, whatever. I lean back, boom, and I pivot out the way. And I became really good at that. I made people look extremely, I would say, plain when I fought them, like when I sparred with them. And mind you, I still got clipped, whatever. I'm not saying that I was the best, but I remember like there was one time that I sparred one of the guys he was a light heavyweight. This is later on. This is like 1999 after I won the U.S. National Championships. And I'm not gonna name his name, but I remember sparring him, and he was a world champion at the time, and we're going at it, and he got so pissed at me that he didn't know what to do. He's like, after 2 rounds, he's like, I ain't sparring your ass. He's like, you ain't even let me hit me. You making a fool of me in front of everybody. And it's like, what the hell? You know what I mean? So a couple weeks go by, and I spar him again, and this time Tommy Hearns is there. You know what I mean? Kind of the same result, whatever. But this time I remember all I wanted to work on was trying to catch him with the left hand to the body. That's all I was like, I was still working on whatever, but that was like the main thing I was trying to work on. And I remember catching him, but I didn't catch him clean. And he like stepped back. He's like, okay, wait, whatever. You know what I mean? And then you have somebody screaming, brrr, brrr, like, no, come on. How you gonna let him do this to you? Whatever. And it's like, that was the environment, whatever. And I didn't get drawn into that. And that's where I think like the mental aspect of boxing comes in. Like, you need to know your limits. You need to know what to do. And like anybody else, like, a year and a half ago, I would have been like, hell yeah, I'm going to sit here and fight, whatever. But no, I'm going to stick to my game plan and not do this. And so, a week goes by, and I think this is before I go to training camp for Winnipeg for the Pan Am Games. And I asked Tommy, I'm like, hey man, so you think we get some work together? Tommy's like, I don't spar southpaws. And then I'm like, what? Don't you fight southpaws? He's like, no. I don't spar southpaws. I'm like, okay, man, no problem. Whatever. Because like at that point in time, like I had confidence about me. Like I was very confident in my skills, whatever. And if I went in the ring with Tommy Hearns and he beat my ass, then Tommy Hearns beat my ass. You know what I mean? Okay. If I went in the ring and I caught Tommy a couple of times, I caught Tommy a couple of times. You know what I mean? Or anybody. Like that's after like 99, that was my mentality. Like I was in like the zone that, listen, I know I could get hurt. I know things could go bad, but I have enough confidence in myself that anybody that I go in the ring with, I'm gonna beat them. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like what came out in 1999 for me, and lasted, up until like the 2000 Golden Gloves. Like it was just unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like the mindset switch, whatever. And I think that's like the biggest thing. Like once somebody gets in that, I call it like the zone. Like Andre Ward talks about that. You know what I mean? He's like, he's so dialed in or whatever. And that's what happens with a lot of fighters. Like they get into a groove, you know what I mean? And it's like, nah, you know what I mean? It's a mental mindset, and it's like, once you get there, it's like, no one's knocking me off my crown. No one's knocking the crown off my head. Even if they do, I still know that I could do better the next time, even if I lose. You get what I'm saying? Like I may still lose, but you're not going to take my confidence away from me. So, yeah.
Great. Let's finish off a couple of fantasy matchups. So a couple of guys from the Kronk Gym. So first of all, I want to ask your view, your opinion on a mythical matchup: Thomas Hearns versus Floyd Mayweather Jr.
Okay, so which Floyd? Pretty Boy Floyd or
Let's go for welterweight Floyd, Mr. Money Mayweather.
welterweight Floyd versus
welterweight
Tommy Hearns? The Tommy Hearns that fought Roberto Duran. Tommy Hearns, I think. As good as defensively as I think Floyd is, I think Tommy. I don't think he would have been able to hold Tommy back. That's just my theory. You know what I mean? I don't think he would have been able to hold him back. He would have broke through his guard. Like, the way that Floyd Mayweather was able to stop or negate Sugar Shane after he hit him, I don't think he would have been able to do that to Tommy. Because Tommy has that killer instinct that he would have continued to go forward. Like he would have thrown him around, and then he would have went after it. And mind you, I know that Floyd can take a hell of a shot, but I don't know if he can take a shot like that from like Tommy Hearns. That's just my theory, man. I love Floyd. Like I love him, but I think if Tommy went aggressive on him and caught him, I don't think he survives. That's just my theory.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a scarier welterweight than Thomas Hearns.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he lost to Sugar Ray Leonard, but it's a 6'1", 6'2", 147 pounds of that right hand and that jab. His offense is as a boxer, it's hard to think of many people better than Thomas Hearns as a boxer. That size, that punching power, very, very difficult to overcome.
And the killer instinct. That's the other thing. Is like what I said. Like he was able to stop Shane Mosley and catch him and hold him up. I think Tommy would have thrown him to the ground. That's just my theory. I think he would have thrown him to the ground, or he pushed him into the corner. Like that's just my theory. Just because he would have had the leverage on it.
So next one, Gerald McClellan versus Roy Jones Jr. Now this was a matchup. They did fight amateur, so they were sort of on a clash course, weren't they?
Yeah, Roy Jones. I like Gerald McClellan. I just think that Roy Jones, in his prime, there's nobody that could touch him. That's just, that's it. It's like James Toney said. He's like, listen, man. He's like, I fought a lot of good fighters. By far, he's probably the best fighter I ever fought. And that's kind of like what Roy Jones said about, James Toney. He's like, probably one of the best fighters I fought. You know what I mean? So I think Roy Jones in his prime, I don't think anybody could beat him.
Yeah, he was untouchable, really, wasn't he? His reflex was just on another level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you're looking at the highest peaks of all time, Roy Jones has got to be right up there, hasn't he?
Yeah, so I just think of, this is one of the questions that, somebody says, like, imagine if he had retired after he beat John Ruiz.
John Ruiz, yeah.
That's it, man. He's the top 5 boxer of all time.
Yeah, some would say maybe even the best ever, I think.
Yeah.
At that point.
And then he went, and what was it? I can't remember. Was it the guy from Jamaica that he fought first? Or what? No, it was Antonio Tarver that he fought first, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And then that wasn't good. Then he fought the guy from Jamaica. I can't remember his name. Hole, is it? That he knocked him out, and that was like, I don't think he was ever the same after that knockout, man. I cannot remember the guy's name. But yeah, when he caught Roy, I was like, man. And Roy had some scary knockouts after that too.
Yeah.
The guy from Russia clipped him really good. That was
Lebedev. Dennis Lebedev.
Yeah. Scary. That was scary to see him go out on his feet. You know what I mean?
So how would you have seen a fight going between McClellan and Roy Jones Jr.? The typical, what we expect of Roy Jones, just too fast.
I just think too fast. Unless he's able to catch him with, but he did dismantle Julian Jackson. So, that's the other thing. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I suppose Julian Jackson, great puncher, maybe the best one-punch hitter I've ever seen. But, yeah, quite different to Roy Jones Jr. in that Roy Jones Jr. would be hitting you and then just making
disappearing.
As well.
Disappearing. Yeah.
Whereas Julian Jackson was more, stand in front of you and punch you.
Yeah.
Do you think the first fight especially, do you think they had an effect on McClellan going forwards? There've been sort of rumours saying that effect started after that Jackson fight.
This is all that I know this is just from my observation, all right? So I remember when Gerald used to come to the gym, whatever, because like he came the same time we did, or he came a little bit earlier, but we would either be leaving at the same time or whatever. We'd cross paths a lot of times, all right? So one of the things that I noticed, and I don't remember when it was because I was too young to notice it, was he used to blink his eyes a lot. He would do this like all the time. And I'm like, he didn't used to do this before. When it started, I don't know. I just, it was a long time ago. And then he left Kronk. He went to go fight in England. And, the fight should have been over after the first round because he knocked him through the ropes. The fight should have been over. But there you go. There goes the politics of boxing. Cost the man, his livelihood. So he started blinking. And I never thought anything about it. I never thought about it ever being related to whatever happened to him in England and stuff like that. I just know that what happened to him in England was just a travesty. So there is an interview online with Tarek Salamasi, and I remember he mentioned this in the interview. He's like, I remember sparring him prior to the Ben fight, and he said that, I popped him with a couple jabs, nothing hard. He's like, because Tarek was 147 pounder. Yeah, he's a welterweight. And he's like, I'm not going to be able to hurt Gerald, whatever. He's like, I hit him. And I just noticed that he just started blinking his eyes all the time. And I asked him, he's like, all right. He's like, yeah, I'm all right. You know what I mean? And you can look up the article and he talks about it. He's like, I knew that there was something off before that fight. And, you know, I made mention of that to somebody that's, I talked to Iceman about that, and, you know, that got brought up in the conversation, and everyone's like, no, he, you know, everybody dismissed that wasn't the case or whatever. But, you know, it's, I think a lot of the damage to anybody is done in sparring versus in the fights. You know, unless it's like a freak accident of what happened to the guy. Oh gosh, I don't remember the kid's name, but it was about 4 years ago where he got the rabbit punches in the back of the head.
Oh, was it Colon Richard Colon, was it?
Cologne, yeah.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah. Where, you know, multiple times he was hit in the back of the head. The referee did nothing, and then now he can, you know, I think he's doing a lot better now, but he still will never be, you know, 100% normal again. But yeah, that is a specific incident, or, you know, or when a fighter gets killed in a ring, you know, I don't know if that's from prior, but, you know, we can't say that. But yeah, I think it made me change my outlook, you know, looking at stuff like, you know, because I knew Gerald got hurt, but I was like, oh, okay, you know, and it wasn't until like I seen him maybe when I was like 17 or 18, I was like it was heartbreaking because that was like a guy that I looked up to, you know what I mean? Like that's one of your heroes, you know what I mean? Like, and to see that, and then to see him, I seen him earlier this year, and it's kind of the same thing, man. It's like it takes a toll, you know what I mean? So yeah, and like I said, it's a brutal sport, but it is something that it teaches you how to fend for yourself, think for yourself, and do a lot of stuff that not many other sports can do. Like I always tell people, I think boxing is probably the one sport that has the most carryover to everything else. And everybody says, how is that possible? I said, everything involves the feet and everything involves the hips. I said, if you know how to move your hips, how to generate power, I was like, you're going to learn how to swing a bat much easier. You're going to learn how to move much easier. You're going to learn how to run much easier. They're like, how? I'm like, I just told you how. So, yeah, but I think that's the thing is, you know, the way that like media has portrayed boxing has you know, painted a black eye, but there's a lot of stuff that boxing has done to paint itself, you know, two black eyes. Like think of, you know, shitty promoters, Don King to be example. I know that some people say, oh, he treated him great. There's a lot of people that says he has not treated him great, you know. And then, you know, there's always arguments of, I signed a contract with you, you're not paying me my money. And then, you know, you have very controversial decisions. Like, I don't care what anybody says, Canelo did not win the first fight against Triple G. He hands down lost that fight. That should have been a Triple G fight. He should have won that fight. But, you know, he's the face of boxing. And so you can't ruin the face of boxing because of that. You know, and there's been a handful of other decisions, and that's like I think it was after the Lomachenko and Devin Haney fight. I was like, man, I'm not saying that either or should have won the fight, but the scoring, I was like, this is the problem with boxing, man. It's not so much about like what I think, because my thoughts, my feelings don't mean anything. It's about when you have people that are out there like, wait a minute, like super uber rich people that have huge influence on social media are going out there and saying, this is why I won't go to a boxing match ever again. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna spend my money. He's like, how are you gonna say that this guy won the fight? How are you gonna say that that guy didn't win the fight? You know, there should have been a draw or whatever. And it's like, you know, and that's happened so much in the past. I think it's really painted a black eye for the sport, because it's an interesting.
It's the business side, isn't it? Where
yeah,
there's a passing of the torch almost, isn't there, from one face to another?
Yeah,
and,
yeah, and you know, and that's the thing, and you know, I still laugh that somebody that gets caught with performance enhancing drugs in their system is still glorified for everything that he's done. And, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but we could talk about.
There's when you say there's a number of names which come into my mind.
but like, so like, and this is like me talking from like what I do, outside of boxing or whatever. And it's like, people don't understand that, like, you have to think of realistically. You have a guy, whoever that guy is. I'm gonna say his name is Canelo, okay? Or like my good friend Eric Kelly. I don't know if you know who he is. So Eric Kelly is like, he calls him Ginger, all right? And he's like, he hates his guts because he got caught with, performance enhancing drugs. He's like, that's not cool. And so, like, what I always tell people is, you mentioned Louis Simmons and Westside. I mentioned that. So Louis Simmons has a really good outlook on all of this. He's like, if you get caught, you're stupid. And that's it. Like, if you get caught, you're stupid. To think that, there's not other people that are diving into this and they're associated with certain camps, which this has been proven. Yeah. So what most people don't understand is that when you pee into that cup, all right, you pee into that cup, that it goes through a 2-step process, all right? So that cup goes to an analyzer. That analyzer runs it, and it just checks if anything is in your system at whatever level, okay? So I'm sorry, it checks it above a certain level. All right, so you're looking at, a certain level of the presence of this in your urine. And then once it gets tested for that, oh wait, one of them shows up kind of weird. So we're going to run a test on what's called a mass spectrometer. All right. And so this mass spectrometer basically looks at urine levels and it has cutoffs. So the only way that you get caught is if you have a level of whatever that performance enhancing drug is above that cutoff. If it's below that cutoff, it doesn't report that it's in your system, or they don't have to report that it's in your system. And I don't know if you remember the whole, I think it was John Jones thing where it was only like a picogram of whatever. It's still in the system. That's just like saying, well, you didn't steal any of my money, but you have $2 of my dollars in your pocket, that have my name on them. Well, I didn't steal all of it. I only stole $2 of it. What happened to you get what I'm saying, right? Yeah. So, I mean, like, from the business aspect of it, boxing is an interesting sport. And if you're the person that's holding the P cup for the guy who's the most famous boxer in the world right now, I'm just going to say, this is just me being conspiracy theorist. So you think you want him to test positive? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well, it always raises the question: if it's happened once, has happened in the past, as in where you haven't been caught, and if you mentioned there's a cutoff level and you're just below that, well, were you using it and cycled it out and got away with it because you were cycling out your system?
So like, I like to use, and I'll refer back to the Cubans in this one, in the 90s. So there were a few Cuban fighters that got popped for performance enhancing drugs when we were at tournaments and stuff like that, and they got suspended. All right, they didn't get suspended for like 6 months. They got suspended for like 1 to 2 years where they couldn't compete at all. And so I remember when I went to my first international tournament at the Goodwill Games, and I was there, and we're all standing in line to pee, whatever. And one of the things that myself and one of my teammates noticed is like, man, why do these Cubans look like something's wrong? Like, everybody else looks like they're dead tired, like they have no emotion on their face and all this. And you just look like there was a massive concern on the Cuban fighters' faces. You know what I mean? I have no idea why. You know what I mean? And then come to find out, one of them winds up getting popped, you know what I mean, at a different tournament that was in that tournament. So was it that they didn't run the test properly? Was he below the cutoffs? Did they not even run his test? You know, because that's the other option. They may not even run it to begin with. It's just a sample that they have. So it's like, that's, you know, and then when we went to the Pan American Games and we're all standing in line, and I remember one of the guys looking at me, he's like, man, what's wrong with the Cubans, man? And it was like, you know, I don't know. Nobody wound up getting caught, whatever. But that's like one of the things I always think about is like so many, I'm not gonna say so many, a few of them wound up getting caught with substances in their system that shouldn't have been in their system. Now, is it that the rest of them were able to cycle it all through? Do they have whatever they had back then to block it out? Did they just, you know, whatever they did to get it out of their system, and some people metabolized it or disposed of it much quicker than other people, and that's why they got caught. But that's like one of the things, like, just because you got caught, is this the first time, or has this been an ongoing issue? You know what I mean? And I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that question.
It's as you mentioned, it's a big rabbit hole to go down, isn't it?
Yes,
Opens
yes.
up a whole lot of other questions.
Yes, it does. Yes.